Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going to be starting this meeting, this program in at around 12:03, 12:05. We're going to wait a few more minutes for people to show up. Thank you.
Udah, udah.
Hello. We're going to wait about 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready to go. Good afternoon. I'm Ushla DeBerry. My sign name looks like that. I'm the director for the Governor's Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Thanks everyone for joining us for our Lunch and Learn program. The topic is MCCR, which is the MCCR is the state of Maryland um, as the Commission on Civil Rights. That's what MCCR is. We have invited MCCR here to have a conversation, and we will have an ongoing partnership with them as well. That partnership is going to include resources that our office can provide and to share with the community at large for the state of Maryland and anywhere else outside of the state that would be interested in what we're doing to be involved with the state of Maryland. I invite you to watch this video first. It's about 28 minutes. And then we will have an opportunity to have a conversation with MCCR staff member Cleveland L. Horton the second. We have the privilege and the honor for him to be with us today. So it will be more about the community and what the community is curious to know from MCCR. So for our attendance, if you're not speaking, could you please turn off your video? And if you have any questions during your time watching the video, please type your questions in the chat, and we'll direct the questions after the video. We have two interpreters here today. We have one interpreter who's voicing, and then we have hearing people today that can speak, and the interpreter will sign for that person. So two separate interpreters. You're going to go ahead with the program first by showing the video now. So everyone will go off screen while the video is playing. Thank you. From MCCR. Hello. Um, I'm Yush. Oh, sorry, I missed your name. Mm, Could you figure spell it again? I'll type it in the chat. I'll rename myself. Sorry. Hello, I'm Urshula DeBerry. My sign name is like this on the chin. I'm the director for the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I'm here with two interpreters. One is voicing and one will be signing for our person for who our guest is. This is Cleveland Horton from MCCR, and we're going to be discussing a little bit more about the services that they provide and how that can better serve the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community for Marylanders. So, Cleveland, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I am Cleveland Horton II. I do have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights.
Awesome. We're really excited to have this much needed conversation with you. Oftentimes, our office will be on calls and want to discuss how best to use the MCCR services that they have. So I hope that today, deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community can get the opportunity to see what you can do and what we can do in collaboration.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the ongoing conversation. And my hope is that this is just the beginning of the conversations, that we will have conversations like this ongoing as we continue to move forward and really strengthen the relationship and the partnership between ODHH and MCCR.
Thank you for saying that. I wanted to recognize also that you have been one of our board members, the MACDHH. Maryland Advisory Council on Deaf of Hard of Hearing. So we appreciate your great services on that board. And so now I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask.
Yes, please.
The first question is, who are you?
So he's the head of
And
MCCR.
what, is special about you? And this is an opportunity for our community to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I would say that this is probably a very simple yet complex question. Anytime you ask someone, who are they? But I'll start by saying I am born and raised here in the Baltimore area. I came into this profession, I would say, by happenstance. I really was looking for a career change, looking for a job, looking for a way to be able to take care of the responsibilities that I had. I was a young parent at the time, so looking really for something that was going to allow me financially to be able to take care of my responsibilities. Is where I came and to know of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So I started here as a civil rights investigator, entry-level investigator back in 2007. I don't come from a long history of change makers, human rights advocates. I don't have any of that in my direct bloodline. So again, this was just an opportunity to really feed my family at that particular point in time. Over the years, engaging in the work that we do here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, I've had the opportunity to grow a very significant and dedicated passion and commitment to protecting the civil rights of everyone within our state. So I've been with the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights now going on 17 years. I have had the opportunity to grow, to understand history, to respect history, to understand the diverse population that we have here in Maryland, and doing so really understanding the diverse issues that impact different populations here within the state. So I've grown a true infinity of making sure that the civil and human rights of folks here in Maryland are protected each and every day. They say if you find something that you're passionate about, that you will never work a day in your life. And I have to say that for me, I've been blessed to have been able to find that here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, because I think every day for me is truly an opportunity to wake up and impact the communities that I have the opportunity to serve. And that's whether it's through policy changes, procedural changes, legislation, really just making sure that the human and civil rights of folks here in Maryland are protected each and every day. So I always say I'm blessed because I don't need an alarm clock. I have my body just wakes up because I'm always excited about the challenges of today. And sometimes people look at challenges as from a negative context. I look at it from a positive context in reference to challenges bring opportunities for us to be better individually, and opportunities for us to be better as communities. So just to make sure that we are ensuring that everyone is being treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are.
Thank you for that. I'm so excited for what you bring to the table, what you explain about MCCR, and they are blessed to have you there. It's clear by your sentiment, you show how sincere you are. Can you share about your role within MCCR?
Sure. My role now as the executive director is really to create the vision for what our agency will be currently and what our agency will be in the future. One of my primary goals as we think about kind of where we are now is really about creating more awareness. I think historically our agency has been a very reactive agency, and that's not a bad thing, right? So, but just recognizing the history of our agency has been to really react to complaints of discrimination. I think as we continue to move forward, as we continue to see that civil rights continue to evolve, the issues continue to evolve, that we have to be a very proactive agency. And within that proactive lens, it means that how are we reaching out to different communities from an education and outreach lens to make sure that, one, folks are aware of what their rights are, because no matter how great of an agency you are, if folks don't know that you exist, they will never utilize your services. So we have to do better with educating folks on what their rights are, what services that we can provide if they feel like their rights are violated, and what our processes are. One of the things that we've been trying to do as an agency is be more transparent. So I've issued a number of different press releases. There's been a number of informational packed content on our social media to let folks know when we think about transparency as an agency, we don't want folks to feel like the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, like we sit behind this mythical curtain. Nobody kind of really knows what we do. Folks just know they file a complaint and then somehow there's a determination made at some point in time. So really peeling back that mythical curtain and making sure that folks understand that one of my priorities is being transparent. So we are going to be issuing a number of public releases around our policies and our procedures. So to make sure that everybody fully understands what we do and how we do it. So folks don't kind of feel like this is some kind of mystery, right? That we go about our work in a very mysterious way and nobody fully understands it. Our goal really is to make sure that every person here in Maryland understands our offices, whether you need our services or not, because we truly believe that every single person in this state, either directly or indirectly, needs our services, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coworker. There's someone in your immediate contact list that could utilize the services of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So it is inherent upon us to make sure that we're doing our due diligence from education and outreach standpoint to make sure that we are touching every pillar of our communities, to make sure that everyone knows who we are, what services we provide, and how we can be of assistance to them. I also think along with that really is an intersection of their rights. We want to make sure that folks understand what their rights are under the law, because most folks are moving about not understanding what fair housing law is, what employment law is, right? What public accommodations law is, right? And more importantly, as we get those additional authorities added to our jurisdiction, like we're talking about health services, because now we cover health services. We also cover state contracts. We also cover commercial leasing. It's important for folks to kind of understand in those contexts what services we can provide so that we can make ourselves available to individuals as needed. So I think, the utmost priority for me right now is really spreading the word, getting the word out. And I think platforms like this one that we're having today allows us the opportunity to do exactly that.
Wow. Yeah. You're doing a lot.
We're trying, right?
Yeah.
Without there's a lot to be done, right? And we always say that this type of work, when we talk about human and civil rights, is really not work that can be done by one organization. It has to be done by a collaborative, whether that's the Advisory Council of Deaf and Hard of Hearing or the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, for example, right? It's important to have great partners who understand the issues of certain communities so that we can move strategically and targeted to make sure that we're addressing those issues, because there's a lot of work out there to be done. But I think collectively is how we get the work done. I think individually we are unable to fix the issues that we know are out there and exist. But I think collectively, if we really sit all down at the table, that we can really figure out how do we fix these issues for the betterment of the communities in which we serve.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what are some misconceptions about that you would like to share with us?
I would probably say to start, one of the biggest misconceptions that we hear a lot is that we represent individuals, right? And we absolutely do not represent any individual, right? We are a state agency. Through our processes, the only thing that we do is we represent the state's interest, right? Individuals have a right to file a complaint with our agency, of course. And through our investigative processes, if we determine that discrimination actually occurred, then we will litigate the matter on behalf of the state because it's a violation of the state statute. Now, individuals always have the right to be represented by their own personal attorney through any of our processes, and we want to make sure that folks understand that too. But a lot of times we'll hear from folks like, hey, you're supposed to be representing me. You're not doing X, Y, and Z. And it's very important for me that folks understand that we are simply a neutral finder of fact. Our job really is to listen to what the complainant is saying and to listen to what the respondent is saying, and then gather information for us to determine what we believe actually occurred. So we don't represent complainants, nor do we represent respondents. Our job throughout the entire process is to represent the state's interest. And I think that's very important for individuals to understand, because there's a big difference from the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and, let's say, just your average advocacy organization. Our missions are completely different, right? Advocacy organizations really are geared towards highlighting issues that are impacting a particular community. Well, the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, our job is to protect all communities. Our job is to make sure all rights are protected. Our job is also to make sure that we remain neutral. So if someone files a complaint, or, regardless of how strong they may feel that a particular complaint is, our job is to remain neutral at all times until we've had the opportunity to gather enough information to make a final determination. I also would say, in addition to that, the misconception that we are not working to move these complaints forward. I think that one of the things that we've been trying to articulate to everyone within the public in a very conservative and preventative type of way is to understand that we are inundated by a number of complaints. And there are going to be times where our time and process, which means the time it takes us from the time that you file a complaint to the time that we actually issue the determination, some of those times may be higher than what we would like for them to be. But that's because we are faced with a significantly high number of cases coming into our agency at this time. We currently have probably approximately about 400 cases in our backlog status, which means there's about 400 cases right now sitting that we are not able to assign to an investigator because we simply do not have enough staff. So that means if someone files a complaint today, right, they're going to be number 401, right? And it doesn't mean, excuse me, it doesn't mean that their case is any less or more important than the other 400 cases that we have in backlog status already. It simply means that we have to assign those cases first before we get to number 401. It's kind of like us, I hate to use this analogy, but it's kind of like going to MVA, right? You remember back in the day, you would go to MVA, you get a number, and you just got to sit there and watch all the numbers, right, until they call your number. And it doesn't mean that any of those patrons that were called before you were more important than you. It just meant that they got there before you, right? So their number was called before you. So we try to get individuals to understand and just cooperate with us as we are working to get to these cases as fast as we can. But we do have a high number of cases in our caseload right now. Ever since, I would say, fiscal year 2016, the number of cases that were being brought into the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights has doubled. But our staff has not doubled at the same time, right? So we have been kind of doing our best to really ensure that our processes are as efficient as they can be to handle this uptick in cases that we have coming into our agency. But we simply continue to see that we have a higher number of cases than we have from a staff standpoint. But again, and that's not to make an excuse, but it's just to let individuals know so they can kind of understand and respect kind of some of the the barriers that we're facing as an agency to be able to respond and investigate these cases in a much more timely fashion. But I will say that I know that the Moore Miller administration is aware of some of these barriers and challenges that our agency is facing in terms of resources. And they have been aggressively working with us to kind of figure out the appropriate solution to that so that we can make sure that we are able to respond to complaints of discrimination in a much more timely fashion.
I like how you were saying about the how how many deaf people at the MBA the draft numbers getting a number and you know how that applies to connecting with your office. I really appreciate that. And explaining that way, it gives us a good kind of picture. And I hope that it will help other deafblind, and hard of hearing to understand the purpose of your office. So, what other tips would you like for our deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community to know? And interpreters are gonna switch. So I'm gonna find.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. For me, when I think about the tips for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community, for me, I think it's really ensuring that you know what your rights are, right? I think if there's an opportunity to collaborate with other organizations like the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, then I think that individuals should definitely take the opportunity to do so, get to know these organizations, get to know exactly who they are, the priorities of those organizations, and kind of figure out where within alignment those organizations fit with the mission, the organization that you all may be a part of. I think that sometimes, we all operate in these silos where each organization is kind of working on its own set of priorities individually versus collaborating at a much greater scale. I know I kind of mentioned it earlier, but for me, I can't mention it enough in reference to how important collaboration is, because while we can work on these issues in our silos, we can only make a certain level of change in our silos. The impact that we can have on communities is much greater when we are bringing other organizations into the fold and utilizing all of our resources. So I think it really is important for members of any community, and not just the deaf, blind, or hard of hearing community, but really, when we think about it, is really making sure that there's a consistent voice that talks about the issues, right? Because you may have one deaf, blind, hard of hearing organization talking about, well, these are our issues. And then you'll have another deaf, blind, hard of hearing organization talking about, well, these are our issues. And so sometimes it makes it difficult when you're trying to address the issues collectively, when there's no cohesiveness even amongst the group in reference to what are the priority areas. I think for us as an agency, when I say us as an agency, I'm referring to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, it is much easier for us to kind of figure out how we can help impact issues if there is a consistent and cohesive idea around what are the priority issues impacting a particular community. While we know that one deaf, blind, or hard of hearing individual doesn't represent the whole deaf, blind, hard of hearing community, I think there are fundamental issues that are impacting the entire community. Sure. And we need to kind of figure out how do we focus on what those priority issues are, and then get into some of the more segmented issues. So kind of what I see is a little bit is that we kind of focus on, we do it in reverse, right? We focus on some of these segmented issues before addressing more of the fundamental priority issues. And then folks kind of feel like, well, there's nothing being done for the community at large, when in fact that's not necessarily true. It's just that unfortunately the priority has been focused on some of those more segmented issues versus addressing some of those larger, more community-wide issues. So I think if possible, to really garner the support and cohesiveness within the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community that identifies and sets forth the priority issues that are impacting the community at large. And then from there, moving forward to kind of figure out who are the best partners to partner with to be able to address these communities, these issues that are impacting the larger community, and then moving into more some of those segmented issues. But I think, and again, this is not just a problem impacting the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community. We see this whether we're talking about race issues, whether we're talking about LGBTQ issues. We see some of these similar strategy deficiencies on a number of different fronts, and really just trying to bring folks back into the fold to work collaboratively and to be able to identify a platform that identifies what are the holistic or more community-wide issues, and making those a priority.
So I'm glad you brought up about partnership, because that's one thing that we're looking for here in our office, is for an ongoing partnership. So I'm just wondering what you would like to see from GODHH to partner with MCCR. What are your thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, I think that's another great question. I think that when I think about the two, I think that there are ways for our agencies to better promote each other, right? I think that there are ways for GODHH, right, to promote MCCR through its community, right, so that folks understand um, the resource that they have in the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and the services that we provide. I also think that the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights can partner better with you all in reference to whether it's training, whether it's showing up to some of your events and programs to make sure that folks see us, that we're visible, right? Because I think it's one thing to say you're a partner. I think it's a completely different thing to be a visible partner, right? Because there are a lot of organizations that say that they partner with each other, but they never see each other, right? I don't believe in invisible partnerships. I believe that the impact of being a visible partner is if folks truly believe and understand at that juncture that you really are a real partner, that they can actually see somebody, right? Talk to somebody, touch someone, right? That partner, right? And I think that that is important because it shows a different level of support, right? Because if I say, as the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, we are a true partner of the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, but nobody ever sees us together, right? We're not at any of the events. Individuals may wonder, well, what type of partnership is this really? So for me, it's really, I think moving forward, it is important for us to kind of figure out how do we show more support and be real partners? Meaning, what are the events that you're having that we can show up to? What are the events that you're having that we can speak and be a part of? What are the events that we can show up and help train folks on the issues and identify recommendations in order to address some of the issues that are impacting your community? I think for me, it's really all about being a real partner. So when I look at partnerships for me, a lot of people approach this from a one-way standpoint. What can you do for me? I always try to address from a partnership standpoint, how can we make this a two-way partnership, right? I like to see, the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing get just as much from this partnership as we would like to get from this partnership, because that's the goal. That should be the goal of any partnership, not that we're just having a one-way relationship and that you're talking about the Maryland Commission, the Maryland Commission, the Maryland Commission, but the Maryland Commission is not pouring back into the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And I think it is extremely important for us to be able to do that.
Yes, thank you for that. So I look forward to that partnership and working together more so in the future. So do you have any final thoughts? Is my final question for you.
I would say this, right? We are just like everybody else. We are humans. There are going to be times where, from a staffing standpoint, we may not get things exactly right. And the only thing I'll say is just give us the grace to be able to correct and address something that we may have done incorrectly. I'll always tell everybody we're not perfect. We will never be perfect. But we will make sure that we do the right thing all the time. So if there is an opportunity for us, if there's an area where we may have fallen short, I do ask for the opportunity to correct that and to address it the same grace that we give everybody else. So I just want folks to understand that we by no means believe that we can do no wrong. There are times where unfortunately we may miss the mark. And we ask that folks give us that honest feedback. I think feedback is important, right? So if there's a particular issue or there's something that folks feel like we just missed the mark on, we want to hear about it, right? So don't feel like we just don't want to hear, hey, we did a great job all the time. We also really want to hear where we can be better at, where are our opportunities. I think the only way for us to grow is for us to hear that information, right? Because I do believe, right, if everybody's just singing your praises all the time, then you're not growing, right? But I think if folks are okay and you provide them with a safe space to say, hey, look, these are some of the things that you can do better, right? This is what happened. We believe that you all missed the mark because of X, Y, and Z. We will absolutely take that feedback and figure out how we can be better, how we can show up better. And I can guarantee everybody, if it's something where we honestly just made a mistake, I can 100% commit that we will fix that mistake and make it right.
Excellent. I really like your final comments there. So I look forward to more collaboration and partnership, as you mentioned. And, we're humans and we face different obstacles and we need to make improvements. And there are things that will be done incorrectly and we could do better. So thank you for sharing that. So now we're going to move on to our Q&A session. So hello, everyone. That was fabulous. Thank you for the wonderful remarks. And now we're moving on to our Q&A session. So this is the time for you as the audience members to type your questions in the chat. So the first question is, how many deaf or hard of hearing contact MCCR? And your answer?
So that's a good question. I don't have that direct answer on me. And in reference to just I'm assuming it's just how many deaf and hard of hearing individuals have reached out to us and filed complaints. But I can gladly get that exact number and get that over to Director Dewberry so she can post that for you all. But I just don't have that direct number offhand. But I can absolutely follow up and get that number for you. I can say that it is a very small number, which is part of why, and again, I do want to thank Director DeBerry for having this conversation because we are trying to create more awareness amongst the deaf and hard of hearing community so that folks will utilize our services at a much higher rate. We recognize there is a large community of the deaf and hard of hearing community that are dealing with issues that are not being brought to our particular agency. And we want to make sure that individuals know who we are and what services we have to offer them, and that folks feel comfortable with bringing that issue to our agency, which is part of why we're having this platform today. So I don't know the specific number, but I can tell you that it is a very small number of individuals from the deaf and hard of hearing community that actually file complaints with the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights.
Thank you for explaining that. So I forgot to include per year. That means it's a small number, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So our next question that we have is, how many staff do you have at MCCR?
Great question. Right now, we have about 40 individuals assigned to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. Now, all 40 of those individuals are not assigned to our investigative efforts. So we do have 4 main departments. That's our case processing department, which includes our intake and investigative units. We have our legal department, which again just services as legal counsel to our agency. We have our administrative department, which is responsible for making sure that we have all the resources and supplies that we need to do the work that we do. They also handle all of our hiring and onboarding and stuff like that. And then we have our education and outreach department, which again, by its name, they're responsible for maintaining all of our marketing, our public outreach efforts, our community events, webinars, trainings, things of that nature. They are responsible for that. So within our education and outreach department, we have 3 individuals. Within our admin department, we have 3 individuals. Within our legal department, we have 4 staff members. And then the rest of our staff are assigned to our intake and investigative units throughout our agency.
Okay. So are there any more questions from the audience? Cleveland, do you see the question in the chat?
Yep, I'm reading it. I'm reading it as we speak.
I can sign it. Just so for the record, I'll sign it. So it says, hello, this is Amber Barnett from Anne Arundel County Office of Equity and Human Rights. Given the attacks on DEI, accessibility, and human rights, what advice or recommendations do you have on how to continue to articulate the needs for accessible spaces and work, professional arenas, home, and otherwise for our deaf, blind, and hard of hearing communities?
Yeah, I think.
So, are you
Oh, I'm sorry.
seeing an
Go ahead.
increase in cases where institutions are removing services that support the community? For example, no longer using closed captioning during virtual meetings.
No, I think that's a great question. Both of them. I'll answer the second question first because it's probably the shortest one. We are not seeing an increase from our standpoint on cases where institutions are removing services that support the community. We actually continue to see an increase, right? When we think about how, even though I think when you think about the entire landscape, when I say landscape, I'm referring to the employment landscape from a professional standpoint. Now, even though many organizations have brought their employees back into the workforce, many meetings are still happening virtually. And folks are still utilizing the captioning via those virtual meetings, whether it's internally or externally. So we are still seeing the same level of accessibility that we saw prior happening now. I think as technology continues to advance, we're actually, continuing to see more. I think as an agency, I know for us, we're always thinking about how can we make sure that all of our events are more accessible, right? Because I think sometimes we take it for granted and don't think about it in the level of detail and importance that we need to. So we are even making sure as an agency that every event that we have has a high level of accessibility so that everybody can attend and get the information that we are trying to articulate through our event. So, but we definitely are not seeing a decrease in institutions wanting to provide services and make sure that those things are being accessible. I think the first question about any recommendations we have to continue to articulate the need for accessible spaces, I think really for me, it's the same regardless of everything that we see now. We know that there are a lot of different things being thrown out there now. And I think that we just need to continue the work that we've been doing prior to this current administration. I think that we need to make sure that we can continue to collaborate, right? So when we think about how the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and ODHH is trying to strengthen our partnership is just one example. I just think it's very important for organizations to kind of really figure out who are your strategic partners and how do you collaborate more with them on a more consistent basis. I think that is the most important thing because we kind of find ourselves in these siloed spaces. So when there is an attack on whether it's DEIA or whether it's LGBTQ rights or whatever it may be, it's easier for the attack to happen when you're siloed. When you come from a collaborative stance and you're utilizing each other's resources and support, we can stand up much stronger to these attacks. So I just think my advice is for us to make sure that we are engaging in very targeted and strategic partnerships. And as you know, even I mentioned in the video, not these one-way partnerships, right? It has to be these two-way partnerships where both entities are getting something from the partnership, where it's not just what you can do for me, it is what can we do for us? How do we support each other? What are the resources that I have available that can benefit you? What are the resources that you have that can benefit me? And how do we support each other, right? So for example, I may be an organization that is based or that is charged with or primarily focused on Black issues, right? But that does not mean that I can't show up and support issues that are impacting, for instance, the deaf and hard of hearing community, right? Even though that particular community might not be at the top of my list, I still can show up and provide support. I still can provide resources. So I think that during this difficult time, these challenging times, that we have to figure out a way to be more collaborative and to show up in solidarity for each other, regardless of whether it's our primary concern or not.
Okay, thank you so much for that response.
Yep.
So we'll move on to the next comment here. And it says it's not a question, but more of a comment that we are in Anne Arundel County and would love to be included in any collaboration efforts on the topic. So it says, my name is Nicola Smith Kia, and I manage the Shepherd Bird Hate Crimes Grant for the county. So my colleague is Amber Barnett, the Deputy Director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights, is on the call as well. So that's the individual that you had already answered the question from.
Yeah, and I know Dr. Nicola very well, so
So,
I'm glad that she's on the call, and we absolutely want to make sure that we do our part to collaborate and include them on these conversations moving forward as well, because I think they're going to be and have been instrumental in terms of how we move forward collectively.
okay.
And I see,
So the next person is Morales. And they said that they contacted MCCR in 2016 regarding a community college not providing an interpreter for 4 days. So I was told that MCCR could not help with this matter with the student. They could, if I was applying for a staff, I was referred to MHE. Then I was referred to a subgroup under the community college under MHE. Long story short, there was no resolution and the person was denied an interpreter. So I'm still savvy enough to follow up on the matter, but with other deaf and hard of hearing individuals, they may not have the same level of perseverance to follow through on the civil rights violation. So how can we fix this?
again, that's a great question. I will say, unfortunately, when we think about our authority, especially as it pertains to educational institutions, our authority is very limited as it pertains to that. We are working to try to fix that. We are working with the administration to expand our authority over educational institutions that would give us some level of purview over the issues that were mentioned in the question. So we are hopeful that by working with this administration, we'll be able to do that. In terms of a timeline, I don't have a timeline of when that will happen. I know obviously this year the focus is on fixing the budget, right? And again, addressing the deficit that we find ourselves in. So I would anticipate potentially that there may be some legislation next session to expand our authority as it pertains to educational institutions. But we are actively trying to address that to give us more authority as it pertains to educational institutions. So now one of the things that we can do, even though we don't have full authority over educational institutions, it doesn't prohibit us from reaching out and having conversations with them and trying to get certain issues resolved. So, but although legally we can't litigate or investigate the matters, it does not stop us from using our voice. So if this is an ongoing issue, I definitely want to know about it and to reach out to see if there's something that we can do to get this issue addressed for you. Although I think probably the response that you got is from an investigatory standpoint. We don't have the authority to take or file a complaint against the community college. But again, it does not stop us from utilizing our voice. So one of the things that we are trying to do as we continue to move forward is use our voice more, especially in those areas where we may not have strict enforcement authority. We are trying to use our voice and do what we can do to still try to get issues resolved because we do want to make sure that everyone has access to resources and services as needed. So again, if this is an ongoing issue, I'd love to learn more about it. So I would ask if you would kindly reach out to me and let me hear a little bit more about it so that we can kind of huddle up internally and kind of figure out what can we do to kind of reach out and try to get this issue resolved if it appears to be more of a systemic issue.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your remarks with us. and the expanded services of outreach to MCCR. So are there any additional comments or questions? You can put them in the chat. So if you can add your contact information in the chat for MCCR, that'd be good. Thank you for that. So any more questions or comments before we wrap up this meeting? Morales said, I would love to explain this more thoroughly, and thank you for your willingness. Amber says, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. It's much needed. And Cleveland posted his email. It's Cleveland L. Oh, let me go back. Cleveland L. Horton at maryland.gov. So be sure it's an L.
Yep.
So it's Cleveland L. Horton at maryland.gov. Thank you for that. And then Morales says, when it comes to interpreter services in Maryland, it has been the poorest customer protection rates. And then Nicola says, thank you very much. And Morales says, don't worry, I know where to find you, with a smiley face. So now, would you have any final thoughts or expressions that you would like to provide to the program, about your program, to the audience?
No, I would say again, thank everybody for showing up today. I do appreciate everyone taking out the time to one, listen to the video and ask the great questions that were asked here today. I think the responsibility of protecting everyone's rights is the responsibility of everybody, not just the responsibility of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So I think that although we find ourselves in some challenging times today, the only way that we're going to get through these challenging times is to get through them together. So it is very important for us to, again, continue to engage each other in these conversations, continuing to support each other, continuing to hold each other accountable, and we'll continue to move forward. So please know that you all have an ally in the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. And if there's anything that we can do to make sure that members of your communities are supported, please reach out to us and let us know.
Thank you so much for giving up your time today to be with us for our Lunch and Learn. And we hope that we continue to do so. We can have an ongoing occurrence of the Lunch and Learn. So Cleveland, thank you so much for your ongoing partnership and support. And Morales says, thank you so much, MCCR, for being brave in the world of the deaf and hard of hearing. And thank you, ODHH. So you're very welcome. So we're going to close out this meeting. We will post this video on YouTube for your viewing pleasure later, to be able to watch. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you to the interpreters as well.
Thank you.
Have
Have a
great
good one.
Bye-bye.